I'd like to introduce themselves.
Michael Rubino, Bronx County Republican Commissioner.
Simon Shamoon, Kings Republican. Thank you.
Frederick Humane, Manhattan Republican.
Mike Michelle, Queens Republican.
Alan Shulkin, Manhattan Democrat.
John Flateau, Brooklyn Democrat.
Marie Costello, Richmond Democrat.
And just for the record, Blanca Perez is here as well. Executive staff?
Michael Ryan, Executive Director.
Joanne Sandow, Deputy Executive Director.
Nina M. Crispino, Director of Personnel.
Kenneth Moulton, Capital Commission. Stephen Wayne, First Counsel. Steve Richmond, General Counsel. Rafael Garcia, Deputy General Counsel.
Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from October 28th, 2014? Is there a motion to adopt them? All right, I'll second it. All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstained? The motion carries. Mr. Ryan.
Yes. We have a preliminary report on this past election. Well, first of all, we'll do the first things first. Let's be deferential to staff. Our staff does not get election day off because obviously we have to work. So we're going to ask the commissioners under my item 2B, in lieu of the election day holiday, to permit staff to take the day after Thanksgiving as the replacement holiday for election.
That's an application that's done every year. I'll move that in.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstained? And the motion carries. Mr. Ryan, before you continue, is there anything else to add to the agenda? Queens personnel? Anyone else? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Yes. This past general election, we instituted a pilot project throughout the city. It was a continuation of the pilot project that we had started in September. In September, we attempted to speed up the processing of the votes on election night by incorporating AD monitors into the delivery process of the PMD, the portable memory device sticks, throughout the city. We found that while it helped, it didn't help as much as we would have liked. It certainly shrunk the time for the overall processing at the end of the night, and it moved our peak up by about 40 minutes, but it really didn't give us the bang for the buck that we wanted. So we made the determination ultimately that the problem is the delivery process, not the who's delivering the PMDs, but the fact that they're being removed from the poll sites and being delivered to another location in and of itself causes a delay and an inability to process the votes as quickly as we'd like. So what we did instead, and I really cannot say better things about our staff and our technical staff. Mr. Nordis is not here. He's on a business trip on agency business, but his staff, MIS staff, the staff of VDO, Steve Ferguson, Danny Lavelle, Steve Thompson, and if I'm leaving anybody out, I apologize, did great work between the primary and the general to establish a process where we process the votes exactly the same way as we have with the software, except we used tablets and we took what's called, the technical word, not my word, a dongle, and that is a device that gets plugged into the battery, the charger portion of a tablet, and allows for a USB device to interface with the tablet. The software necessary to upload the results was installed in tablets at 216 poll sites throughout the city. In addition to that, at those 216 sites, we took the antenna similar to the antenna that, or maybe identical to the antenna that was in the kiosk, and we placed that antenna into a void in one of the supply carts in the back, so that supply cart would now become a hotspot. And we now would have wireless connectivity in the poll site. And the way that they programmed it was to make sure that it was as fail-safe as possible. So once you fired up the tablet and you told the tablet what county you were in, all you then had to do was take the PMD sticks, plug them into the machine, the screen would go yellow, and then the screen would go green. Once the screen went green, you take that stick out and repeat the process over the course of time. And just to give a for instance of how successful we were, if you go back to the elections that we've processed over the last couple of years. In the 2012 general, let's take that one as a point of reference. From 9 o'clock to 9:30, we had no PMDs, none, uploaded. If you go to the 2014 primary, between 9 o'clock and 9:30, we had 7 PMDs uploaded. In this election, we had 719 PMDs uploaded. The entire project, which included 216 poll sites, of which we had results from 213 poll sites. All of those poll sites had their results completed by 9:35. So that shows us that that's a direction that we need to move in as a board in terms of processing election results. And like I said, it ended up, if you go from, say, the 2012 general, if you take it all the way out to the end of the night, we finally got our last stick in about 3 o'clock in the morning. This election, we had it at 1:30. The only reason we had it at 1:30 and not at 12:30 was there was one precinct in the Bronx, the 40th precinct, that did not have connectivity. We were done so early that Mr. O'Grady, our VEOU director, left here and went to the Bronx on his way home to find out what was taking their sticks the time to be processed. And he found out that they thought they had been uploaded, but they didn't have connectivity, and he made sure that they had connectivity, and that's the little bump in the stat that you see that got us to 1:30. Otherwise, everyone else was done by 12:30. And I think that that's relatively unprecedented, and I think also that it really shows what the staff here can do and what they can accomplish even in a relatively short period of time, and that we do really have a talented group of folks here that get things done. And often some of the criticism that we get is not quite as warranted as others might seem to think it is. And that having been said, it was a great election night for us. I'm very proud of the work that the staff did, but there's more work to be done. And for folks that think that we've now stumbled on the magic elixir that's going to fix all of the election issues and tone down the complexity of elections, it's a complex process. It's 1,241 poll sites. It's over 3,000 pieces of voting equipment. It's 50,000 total pieces of equipment that have to be delivered and recollected citywide. It's 32,000, 33,000 poll workers. This stuff doesn't all just come together just because we want it to. It creates, it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of dedication, and the folks did a really tremendous job. And look, we got praise from NYPIRG and others on Election Day for how few problems there ultimately were, and there were a few problems, and in the meantime, the Presidential Commission report was right. And we'll go back to it and remind everybody what it said, right? Boards of election, and this is not just the city of New York, but boards of election in general are criticized loudly when things don't go well. But praise is not forthcoming in equal measure, their quote, not mine, when things go well. And, you know, excuse me for, on behalf of our staff, taking a bit of a victory lap for this past November, but I think the staff deserves it. They worked hard, and they implemented some innovative things that are a beacon for us to shoot for in the future when we go ahead and implement things across the board. So I'm very pleased with the outcome of the pilot project.
What's the next step with respect to the pilot?
Well, the next step is we're meeting on Wednesday. And we have to evaluate it, you know, and that is true. There's already a meeting scheduled for Wednesday. There are certainly significant elements of what we need to do moving forward that will require public discussion and commissioner level approval. And once we come up with a dispositive list of what we think those things are, we'll bring it back to the commissioners and have that discussion, you know, publicly as we do with everything else.
Commissioner May?
Yeah, because of the great success, part of what you guys should be looking at is what the potential cost would be to roll it out beyond the 216 locations that we did, and maybe we can sort of tack that on to a budget request. And this is obvious stuff, but
Right.
you know, really, it seemed that it was a very good experiment, and
Right.
we should try and maintain the momentum.
And the one thing, Commissioner Eman, I'm glad you brought that up, because one thing that I neglected to mention was we were using tablets and integrating tablets into the process, irrespective of the vote counting aspect, because the technology needs to be used to assist the folks out in the field. And the big thing that we were using the tablets for is communication with tech staff on election day, so that they get information in real time and they can respond to problems, you know, more quickly than they did. You know, the telephones were good and they served a purpose while we used them. But now that we have this other technology where this communication can happen a little bit more rapid fire, we're finding that we're able to respond to things more quickly. Our response times are going down. Interestingly enough, very preliminarily, and we don't have all the data, you know, we're finding out that we're hearing about more problems. So it, you know, it kind of looks like a little bit of an uptick, but in reality, they're telling us about things that we wouldn't have known about in the past, right? So we're fixing problems and making things better. But this pilot was budget neutral. It was equipment that we were already deploying out into the field anyway, that was already purchased, and we found another way to use it. And the other thing I gotta, you know, and I didn't mention this, but it bears real recognition. The software, the adapted software from the election night reporting system onto the tablet was done fully in-house by our staff. And they did it under a very short period of time, from September, when we did the post-election analysis after September, and we said, hey, look, this AV monitor thing didn't get us as much as we really wanted it to. We were hoping for more out of it. We didn't get more of it. What can we do? And we had a skull session, and we brainstormed, and you know, the suggestion was made that the ENR, the election night reporting software that was developed in-house, could be adapted for tablet use. And then the question was, how are we going to be able to develop the interface? And at a relatively low expense purchasing these, I'll call them adapters. I used the technical term once, we'll move on. But these adapters for the tablets, it was a relatively low-end expense, and it was something that we would have wanted to do anyway in terms of the adapters, because there's other reasons why you might want to be able to upload information to a tablet on election day. But you're right, there is going to be some expense, and you would have to examine all of those things.
The other thing that you might look at is the security ramifications of trying to do this. While it doesn't affect the actual scanner and the information controlled there, there are conspiracy theorists out there that would speculate that maybe the vote totals coming in could be adjusted and be subject to possible hacking and all of that sort of stuff. So we would, now this was so new that the hackers wouldn't have known about it
Right.
in order to be able to get to it. But it's just something that we need to be concerned about going forward.
Right. My understanding, and we had those discussions, in-house, the encryption, the way it's done is, and I can't speak to the technical levels of it, but the encryption, the way it's done is designed to prevent those kinds of things. But in terms of the hackers, my understanding is, and even by a nod, Mr. Ferguson, if you could say if I'm on the right track or not, is that the more sites that you do the uploading from, the more difficult it makes for the hackers. The more concentrated that you do the uploading from, the easier it is for the hackers. Right.
Isn't also the uploading unofficial and the actual
Yes.
ballots are being
Right.
counted? Is that-
Absolutely, but I want to stress, we're doing this exactly the same way that we would have done it from the precincts. Nothing has changed other than the location where the uploading occurred. So the system security, over the last several years, we have come to rely on the system being secure. That having been said, it is my understanding that our staff, MIS and EVS and the vendor, work constantly to stay one step ahead of the people that would do mischief. But the system as we have it right now is a secure system and hasn't been the subject of any external manipulation. But even that having been said, diluting the concentration by adding, say now, turning it from 76 locations where you're doing and uploading to 1,241 would make it that much more difficult for somebody that had a mind to try to do it, because they'd have to, be present at 1,241 places as opposed to 76. So first of all, it would take a grander conspiracy, and then secondly, I think that the security aspects of it have been adequately addressed up to this point, but no one is resting on their laurels. They always know that there's some other way that somebody could always try to defeat what you've created, right? And I mean, that's the big thing too. I mean, they are unofficial, which is why the system was ultimately designed to have the backup and the primary. And so the ones, the PMDs that get delivered on the back end of the process deliver the real results, as we'll call it. The other thing that I would like to mention to the commissioners, just for information purposes, Community Education Council 31 in Staten Island on November the 3rd, and it received a little bit of attention in the Staten Island Advance, passed a resolution asking for the Board of Education, the Department of Education, to adopt a policy voluntarily consistent with the Commissioner's recommendation to the change of, our Commissioner's recommendation to the change of Election Law Section 8-100 to close the public schools on primary days. So there's at least one Community Education Council that has made that resolution, and it has been forwarded to Chancellor Farina. I don't know what ultimately, how that process works, but I thought that the commissioners would like to know that their recommendation was heeded by at least one of the community education councils. The other thing is, there was a couple of letters. Yes, Mr. Aronson, I do read the Daily News on occasion. And sometimes more often than I'd like to, quite frankly. But I'm a former paper carrier, so my heart is with the Daily News. In any event, there were two letters to the editor in the Daily News calling out the Board of Elections for not properly notifying of poll site changes, and I took it upon myself to take the names of the two individuals that wrote the letters, and I wrote to them. And I told them why we make poll site changes and the reasons why the poll site changes occur, and I also sent a copy of their poll site change notice that went out in the form of an information notice that we sent out in August. And I received a reply back from Mr. Lobenstein. And it was interesting because one was a Democrat and one was a Republican. So in the bipartisan spirit of the Board of Elections, we got criticized by both parties. And Mr. Marola was one letter writer and the other one was a Robert Lobenstein. I sent out the letter to him and I explained to him, what happens and that there are multiple ways that they could find out where their poll site is. Call us, go onto the website, go onto pollsitelocator.com, call 311, etc. And I'm not gonna read the entire letter, but the letter that we got back from Mr. Lobenstein, who also happened to have the same polling site as Mr. Marola, was conciliatory. He thanked me for my prompt response, but I'll read the second to last paragraph. I never got the notice of the polling site changes from the BOE. Recently, a postal worker in our Ryder Station, zip code 11234, was arrested for hoarding almost 3 tons of mail in his home. Mail dating back to 2005. I, along with several other neighbors, commented between us that we were missing bills or other mail. No doubt when the USPS straightens out this mess, I'll get my 2014 BOE notice in 2016. If I miss your future mailings, I will take advantage of your various forms of voter information and I'll head to the correct location, ! Signed sincerely, Robert W. Lobenstein. So, we do respond to these things. We do our best to make sure that the voters are in fact notified. There is no grand scheme to try to disenfranchise anyone or to move poll sites, to try to do damage to the election process. It's actually very, very much quite the contrary. So I'll be looking forward to it. I don't know if he's planning on it, but if Mr. Lobenstein happens to send a conciliatory letter to the Daily News saying that he's received a response from me, I would certainly hope, although I don't deign to impose my will on editorial decisions of the Daily News, but perhaps if such a letter should come, it would be nice to see it published in the paper in any event. But even if it's not, it made it to this tape. So now that's what I think is a sufficient level of presentation for today's purposes. However, if anyone has any other questions regarding the election, this past election, I'd certainly be happy to share more information.
Mr. White, can you have John O'Grady come to next week's meeting and give us the results of the pilot program regarding the privacy booths? I know it's a success in Queens, but we had asked for some hard numbers and sufficient information to report back to the commissioners so a vote can be taken as to whether or not we're going to go forward with implementing this in the future.
Right, and that implementation obviously would be consistent with state law because there's limits to what we can do on that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Flax?
Alan Flax, New York County Democratic Committee. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 0. But anyway, I wanted to let you guys know I couldn't be all over the city, Van Cortlandt Park to Far Rockaway. But before the 9 p.m. close of polls, I went back to my polling site, West Side High School on the Upper West Side. And I observed how they were closing. We do have a super coordinator there who would even get rid of the other coordinator because he can do it all. He can. In any event, we saw, as a newspaper reporter said, history in the making as they were using the tablet to transmit the data. And after staying there long enough and also looking at the tapes, and while looking at other things, I then proceeded to my local police precinct, which I had permission and on the honored guest list to observe what happened there. Well, once again, the 5 workers from the Board of Elections were again, my favorite phrase, pooling their ignorance, and they weren't sure. And then watching the operation there, and when flash drives, which I like to call those USBs, were brought in, and those that had already been, had the data removed from them or sent, and they had to do it again, they weren't sure why they were doing it again, and even the election police officer, lieutenant, was wondering why you have to do everything again. What they didn't know, what he didn't know, what we didn't know, was that it was an experiment, as Mr. Ryan explained, just to see how it goes, but then everything was done in the normal sequence. From there, I left.
And by the way, if I could just interrupt you for a second, Mr. Flax, that was part of the fail-safe of the pilot. That we weren't going to change any of the delivery process and take these 216 sticks out of the normal course of commerce, if you will, on election night, to make sure, because we know once the data is stripped out, even if they get plugged in at a police precinct, it'll say the data's been stripped out. So we did that on purpose to test, to field test these tablets with no risk to the unofficial outcome. Because if the tablet for some reason didn't transmit the data or it didn't transfer the data properly, then once they got back to the precinct, they would be included in the results process in any event. So it was us covering all bases under those circumstances. But thank you.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, Mr. Executive Director, to get that point on the record.
All right, thank you. Mr. Flex.
No, one more point. It was those experiments and the tablets, 8 minutes after they were, it was done within 8 minutes of the poll closing. Excellent, outstanding. Then I came down here to this room. I was here at midnight till 2 in the morning watching the returns come in, and even seeing them before the news media did by maybe 90 seconds. That meant nothing. There were people here from Reuters and other media, but I was observing here, and it seems everything was going well. Mr. Nardis and his crew were in the room, and things, one was able to see everything, and we were allowed to ask someone or use the mouse herself to check returns in your boroughs. And so it seemed to go well, and I did want to mention that.
We'll take that as a compliment.
Yes.
Commissioner Simon?
Yeah, glad the pilot went well.
I was hoping perhaps to hear today a little, maybe some statistics, general problems out in the field. What were some of the top concerns, issues with the machines, jams, overvotes, poll workers? Maybe next time we can have.
No, I mean, we can discuss that. The ballot jams still come in at less than 0.5%. What the ES&S is going to do for us is we have some anecdotal information. For example, there was one particular machine in Manhattan that accounted for 77 ballot jams. So ES&S is going to mine that data. Keep in mind, we're only 2 weeks out from the election, but they're going to look at those machines and see, and we think at least anecdotally, that a very small number of machines are accounting for, the lion's share of the ballot jams. And that could mean that there is some technical adjustments that need to be made with that machine. It could mean that that machine needs to be swapped out and maybe rebuilt. We're going to look at all of that. With respect to the overvotes, we believe that the overvotes, and again, this is very, very preliminary, so it's kind of, you're walking a little bit of a tightrope. I don't want to put information out there that's wrong. But from a preliminary perspective, it appears that the overvotes may be related to the write-in column. Because at the bottom, if a portion of the timing mark, since that one oval is hanging out, if, say, the third timing mark from the right gets damaged in the tear-off, the machine will default it to the fourth timing mark. And if it goes to the fourth timing mark, now that reading is going to be skewed. So they have to take a real look at that and see if that's, I mean, preliminarily, that's what they think is contributing to some of the overloads. The good thing about that is, though, that all gets corrected in the official results calculation. And the other thing is we implemented, for the purposes of assisting the boroughs with respect to those areas where the backup, which is really the official results, what we call the backup PMDs, are not readable. We're using the DS850s to run those ballots through again, so that, you know, they're state certified, they give us another PMD, and they give us, you know, another results tape for those areas where we had bad data on the stick, and that prevents the hand counting that we did for that one election back in September when we were using the summary tapes. So this fixes that problem. And what we're finding, we're getting the information back from all of the boroughs, is having the 850s available to do this run through again is driving down the discrepancies. So we should see next week when we do the certification, that the discrepancies in each boroughs that we've always had to deal with in every election, no matter what machines we're using, there's always discrepancies, right? It should be driven down substantially. So those are that's kind of, you know, some of the feedback that we've gotten, you know, up to this point. And then also we do have some preliminary feedback as well with respect to the, and I'll give credit to Commissioner Shimon on this, certainly was the robocalls. It was Commissioner Shimon's suggestion back in September that we do robocalls, and we did it, and we did it again, you know, for the general, and at a relatively low cost, we did start to reach out to some new pools of poll workers in a way, despite the fact that they have to listen to my voice in order to get through to the process. Still, quite a number of people have actually, you know, called back and said, I don't know who this guy is on the phone, but, you know, I don't mind being a poll worker. So, you know, and we've done it basically at borough request. No, they run me a script, and I can still read. I can still read English off a script. But the boroughs in the areas where they were having shortfalls, and they asked us to do it. We did it. I know the process now. It's very simple. I go, I record it, and we give different codes, and then they take care of it from there, and then the calls go out. And the one place that we can't really completely quantify how well we're doing in that regard is only by spike, is we give the poll workers, the potential poll workers, the option to go into the EDW, Election Day Worker, right, or follow the phone prompt. The ones that follow the phone prompt, we can come back with hard data on. The ones that go into EDW, right now we don't have a way of differentiating the ones that we got from a robocall versus the ones that we got from you know, from somebody just calling up because they were going onto the website because they wanted to be a poll worker and use the EDW. So that has provided some real opportunity to get folks that were otherwise not engaged in the process to be engaged in the process. And just to explain to everybody what we did was, in those areas where we had shortfalls, and our borough offices are telling us, hey, we need more poll workers in this spot. We sent out robocalls to every registered voter that we had a phone number for. And we got calls back. So that means that they can come from any particular, you know, persuasion. It's actually, obviously we say poll workers, registered Democrats or registered Republicans, but any registered Republican or any registered Democrat, regardless of personal affiliation with anyone, in those areas where we had shortfalls, got robocalls. Obviously, we didn't do robocalls into areas where we had a plentiful numbers of poll workers, because people kind of like to stay close to home, or, you know, mostly in their neighborhood. So, you know, Commissioner Shimon, certainly thank you for bringing it up to us. It was something that no one had really thought of doing. We did it now once in the primary and once in the general, and it seems to be something that, you know, I would think will become part of the fabric moving forward, and they'll give us opportunities to continue to, you know, troll for new
Thank you.
workers.
Thanks. I don't need the praise, but Selection Day really is a day where I get a lot of my anecdotal feedback, and, you know, it's the same general and specific problems. You know, my poll site keeps changing, I don't get the notices. Now we know at least one reason why. The ballot design could use more work, I'm overvoting because of that. The races aren't delineated or separated. I hope that, you know, 2015 will be a year, because it will be a quiet year, that we can really address some of the basics. You know, ballot design. You know, I keep hearing the same thing from voters. Why can't there just be a bold line in between each race? And then I have to explain to them that there's some red tape that prevents us from doing that.
It's called the election law.
Yeah. I try to speak it,
Right.
but, you know, simple things can oftentimes make a big difference. So hopefully next year is a year where we can make some good changes with ballot design, poll worker training, and, you know, getting our information out to the public, especially if their site has changed or they've been affected in a specific way. So,
Right.
you know,
Well, with the poll site changes, I mean, occasionally there are poll sites that have changed, for lack of a better term, I'll say voluntarily, you know, where it's deemed that some site could be more convenient than another. One of the issues that, you know, Dawn and I have discussed, and we certainly need to do a better job on, is communicating with the local folks prior to a poll site change going into effect, and prior to, you know, recommendations being made to the commissioners. Because let's face it, the commissioners approve all the poll sites, but you're getting a laundry list of poll sites. It's impossible for every commissioner to know every single poll site that they're approving. So you're relying on, and rightfully so, relying on the work that the borough office does and that executive does to make sure that these things get done properly. But I will say this, and it's a big caveat. The ADA compliance issues are a big deal. We have a federal court order that we have to follow. We have specific, rigid timeframes within which we have to work. And if a site, for some reason or another, cannot be made compliant, either partially or totally, and I'll separate the two of them. Totally would be that there is some issue preventing someone who is utilizing a wheelchair or is vision impaired or whatever from actually accessing through a door within the place. Partially, which is what we're finding out is maybe a little bit more of our problem, we used to be able to put more machines in a given location. Given the accessibility requirements, and I understand them, you need clearance around these machines so that folks, we're talking now, not singling them out, but particularly folks using wheelchairs, need sufficient clearance around these machines to independently exercise the voter franchise. That's an important thing. That's something that we should all, you know, embrace. And when we have locations with limited space, we may have to remove an ED or 2 or 3 from that place and shift it somewhere else where there's larger space. And there's nothing that we're going to be able to do about that. So the question then becomes, how do we communicate this to the voters? We don't have an unlimited budget, so the annual voter notice is one way that we do it. And, you know, people throw them in the garbage. People don't pay attention to them. They may think it's junk mail, and they don't pay attention. some of this does flip back to, voter responsibility. But then there are also other ways that they can find it out. They can call us, right, at our number here.
We can call them.
Right. That is, potentially another way to do it, but that's also, that is something that wouldn't be budget neutral, that would be part of a larger discussion. But they also can go onto our website. They can go on to pollsitelocator.com, and if any of those three don't tickle their fancy, they can call 311. And 311 is tied into our system where they can give the information to us. And this year, for the first time, Google actually made us, through Pew Institute's VIP banner on their own, they did it. They made us part of their banner on Election Day, where folks could, if they went on to look up, it would come right up on Google. So, there are different ways, and that's part of a larger discussion, but I don't want this meeting to pass, and I don't want any meeting to pass without continuing to remind folks that poll sites are going to be moved over the course of time to comply with the United Spinal decision. That is a reality of the world that we live in New York City, and it's not going to change.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
Aside from the annual notices, once a beetle is put into the system, and that means a full site change, and it's signed off, our system automatically generates a full site change notice to the voter, automatically. So they also get that. As soon as the change is completed in the system, the full site change notice does go to the voter immediately. And they also receive the annual voter notice with their little card on the left-hand side that they can cut out and put in their wallet and take with them.
Thank you. I move that we go into executive session for litigation and personnel. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstaining? All right, the commission will be meeting next Tuesday, November 25th at 1:30. First thing, our next meeting, which is on for November 25th, will start at 1 o'clock promptly. And you're going to notify...
We will post a notice on the website.
All right, second thing, the commissioners unanimously advanced Jonathan Testaverde has been granted a 210-hour advance time to be paid back with his accruals upon his return. His employment with the board began on February 20th, 2012, and he holds a VMT title. This advance of time is to be retroactive and is to begin on November 2nd, 2014. And also, unanimously, the commissioners voted to allow Benjamin Andrich an advance of discretionary 420 hours. He's been employed with the board since January 20th, 2002, and holds a position of clerk. The discretionary advance of time will be retroactive to begin on November 9th, 2014. There's no further action. Is there a motion to adjourn executive session?
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Seconded by me, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.